All right. Okay. We're live. Yeah,
Always live.
always live, brother. Anyways, yeah, we were just talking about I think this is a very strong point to start off with, is that what I was just saying is that all spiritual teachings, whether it's non-duality, I think you briefly asked if non-duality is a philosophy or like a religion, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was getting that.
yeah. The teaching itself is a philosophy, and the teaching itself is a terminology and a philosophy, but it's an imitation of the actual experience. So the words itself, the way you may describe it, all of it is not actually non-duality. It's only just like trying to describe the experience as best as you can with the realm of words, right?
Yeah,
And that's the thing, like
in there.
you could read a bunch of texts, you could read a bunch of books, you could talk all about it. You could even see other non-duality teachers talking about it. But it does not necessarily mean that they actually have the experience, right? I, I and that's the thing. Like I've, for me, I have this little sense if I could tell whether like a non-dual teacher is authentic or not. I'm not gonna name names because it's gonna be
Yeah,
very controversial, but like you could tell that anyone could get a bunch of bundle of words, put it together and make it seem mystical, special, and kind of like, oh wait, make people wonder and curious, like, oh my God, does he know
you throw
something?
together some flowery language. Yeah, and some pretty imagery and things, and a
Yeah,
particular tone of voice, and someone who's very charismatic.
yeah,
And absolutely, there are
yeah.
many paths and teachers that have gotten bad reputations for that sort of energy.
Mm, mm.
But a lot of people can't distinguish it, especially if they're young in their spiritual path. They can't distinguish the difference, and this is about coming back to discrimination. And so sometimes this is necessary for us to make mistakes and to sit with a teacher for a while who isn't actually genuine until we start to feel inside what that's like, and then maybe sit with somebody else and get a sense of what that feels like and which one is more genuine.
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely, man. And I think that's like very, very, you do touch very briefly on, you are completely right with that, because sometimes we are meant to be with a teacher who is not genuine. It could be just like a little lesson that you could learn for the future. And I've seen many like reviews of different teachers. Again, I'm not going to mention any names, where certain teachers would like manipulate their followers. They would like gaslight their followers. They will make them feel confused. Of course, it's okay to feel confused by certain things, but I'm saying like in a gaslighting way, like the way a narcissist would do it. And
Trigger them, yeah, for manipulative purposes.
yeah, but that's nothing to do with non-duality. Same thing with religion, okay? At its core, religion is based on non-duality, the actual pure experience. To its core, it is.
Well,
And
though we can't actually encapsulate it in words, as you've already
yeah,
mentioned, right? And just as really any experience, any phenomena can be
mm,
talked about, but the talking about it is not the experience, is not the phenomena itself.
mm,
So before we go too much further, I think just for anyone who might not be fully clued into the conversation, what even is non-duality? What are we speaking about here? Let's see if we can
yes,
define it.
yes, yes. Okay, so non-duality for me is this. For me is a recognition that who you are, who you think you are, as bundle of personalities, thoughts, identities, who you think you are as, Sean, or your name, Cohera land, all that, you know, your ethnicity, your sex, your sexual like all of that essentially is not you. Noticing even your body, your mind isn't you, but
So
everyone keeps saying that.
anything you can point to.
Anything you could point to, exactly, that isn't you. And realizing that it's that is personal reality. It's an interpretation of what you think life is, but it's not the actual permanent reality. And non-duality is the permanent reality. It's basically what encapsulates and what is omnipresent, omniscient, which is everything. It's beyond human, it's beyond ideas, it's beyond thoughts, it's present forever, it's timeless, it's beyond the perception of individuality and humanness in general. And this is like some very deep stuff. This is what many may call God, many may call love, many may call universe, many, you could call it anything you want. You call it Brahman, you could call it Allah, you could call it whatever you want, but essentially it's the self that is permanent. That's it. It's just the self that is permanent. And what is the self that is permanent, you may say? Now, everyone has a false idea. When you don't actually have the experience of this, when you don't actually recognize it yet, you may have a lot of misunderstandings and you may actually understand and misinterpret what I talk about.
It's very easy.
Right?
Yeah, we're using words. And if we haven't had the experience, we're trying to explain it and describe it with words. It's kind of like, imagine trying to explain to someone the taste of honey when they've never had it before.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
close are we going to get to giving them the experience, really?
Yeah, exactly. You try to explain them how great and delicious this honey flavor is, but when they try to imagine the taste of it, they will probably have like a distorted, perception of what honey tastes like.
It's some kind of like exotic maple syrup or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, nope, not even close. It's more nectar. Like, okay, like apricots? No.
No.
Try it. I have to taste it.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about recognizing. That was the first thing that you really said, is that this reality is verifiable to each of us. But I can't prove it to you because it's not an external thing that we can point to as a reality. It's something we have to awaken to, recognize, realize within ourselves. And so many of us are caught in this realm of thought where everything we experience gets filtered through thought and filtered through this small-minded self, so that it's a challenge just to get out of this space, to unlock this space, to be able to experience anything else in another dimension of reality, let alone this source of all experience, this changeless reality, which is unaffected by anything that happens on the physical plane, energetic plane, what have you, remains the same, and yet is completely permeating, used in, not separate from in any way, every living thing, every atom, every moment of experience is replete with the truth of with the fact of its reality, whether we see it in that moment or not. But it's always there for recognizing. Once we know how to look, we can see it.
Yeah. And I don't know the specific quote, but I think Jesus talked about the purity of a child, of an infant, and we should be like that. And the thing is that what he means by this is that children don't see things necessarily by intellectual fact. They see things just how they are. They don't attach any labels. They don't attach like when I say meaning, they mean words that connect to things that you see. They don't attach any sort of thing. They just are life and they see things just the way they are. And that's the whole point of non-duality, is to break out of the false perceptions, false interpretations of life, because we all agree that the way you are seeing things right now is purely subjective. Your beliefs, the way you're experiencing life. I mean, I'm talking about mentally with.
We know that, but a lot of people who might watch this, or just for sure, a lot of people who are out there may not be aware of that as a conscious thing. It might be a belief that they have. Oh yeah, we're all having a subjective experience, but like everyone knows this, right? Like everyone is aware of this. People who say these things, this is the way it is. Everyone knows that. They're identifying with a particular form of the culture scape, let's say, and claiming that as reality, when in fact, just as you said, every experience is completely subjective.
Yes. And you know what? I think the first step is to just simply recognize that. Because when you recognize that your experience is completely subjective and of full interpretation, that opens you up to higher possibilities. You start to question, you start to inquire, you start to contemplate, like, wait, this is my interpretation, right? I'm looking at this situation. Am I seeing this situation just the way it is? Just by pure perception of eyes? Or am I adding meaning to it? Am I adding these stories to it? Am I adding these imaginations to it that are just coming from my imagination? And when you think of that, you start to just open up a little bit. You start to just, I'd say most people in the world would not recognize the actual experience of non-duality, but what they can recognize is that they could be closer to that reality. They could feel that space. They could not identify it with as that much, because most people see their own reality as the actual reality. Like, for example, I had a very bad past. Maybe I was bullied in the past. I think of that and I carry that with me wherever I go. Now I feel like that's me. That's something is irreversible. I can't change this.
Mm.
But when I'm saying it's a subjective interpretation, you're like, wait, if it's a subjective interpretation, maybe it may not be as real as I think it is. And that's where a subtle shift comes.
So what you're talking about here is just a simple curiosity of self-inquiry, which is, in my mind, and in my experience, is certainly one of, if not the top most powerful tools that I've used to bring about that state of recognition, because it forces the mind to stop and look. And I often refer to this looking as running experiments. These questions, when we ask ourselves these questions and we notice what it provokes within us, that is a particular type of experiment that we're running. And so it's going to bring about data. We're going to get results in the form of, oh, my body feels this way. My energy seems to flow like this. Oh, this causes a horrible feeling. Ah, this generates the sense of well-being.
Yeah.
We're starting to realize and to develop this relationship that we can interact with. But, when you mentioned viewing the world through the eyes of a child, when we return to this recognition of pure consciousness, of non-duality, it's like a coming home. And so we've built up this false sense of a me. We've built up the mind-made self with all its memories and subjective projections. And then and our lives become so contracted, you know, and ho hum and a struggle, and there's drama, and we think, is this all there is? Like, even if I win at all this stuff, like, is this as good as life gets? And then at some point, if we're lucky, we become so dissatisfied that we ask the question, wait a minute, what else is there to life? There must be something more.
Yeah, yeah.
And that question begins this process of looking within, because we've already looked without. We've seen everything the world has to offer. And we see that even the most successful people with the most hedonistic lifestyles often are the most miserable.
Yeah.
And so the process begins at undoing that small self and experiencing these other dimensions of reality. And as the whole matrix starts to come apart, come unravel, and there's this incredible sense of returning home. And then I can see through that pure consciousness, but it's so much more profound than what a child sees, because it's the same energy seeing that has also seen the duality in its intensity and knows that so intimately, knows all the trappings and the knots and the prisons that we create for ourselves, and then experiences the bliss of the freedom of release from all of that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Like, you're right, it is much more profound than the child pure, like a child's pure vision. Because with the child, although there's pure consciousness in that, there's also naivete, there's a lot of innocence. And and if someone teaches you something and you don't know how to get out of it, then you get stuck with it. That's how usually we get programmed, we get taught into these beliefs, is that as children, we are so naive to believe in authority that we fail to trust in how we see things, right? And the actual pure consciousness. And with that, when you grow, as you mature, you look into both of these worlds, and then you make the decision whether you want to stay in that reality or you want to get out of it. And like I said, anything that's not permanent is not real. Anything that's not permanent is not real. Now, you could say, well, I'm real. I have my body here, I have my, like, how am I not real? I can feel myself. I can feel this chair. If I feel this chair, that chair must be real, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah, of course, it feels real to you. You feel the senses of it. But when I say real is way beyond this chair that I'm feeling right now, okay? Real is unspeakable, wordless, unperceivable truth that is always permanent there. For me, analogy I really like to use is this. When you are painting, right, you need sort of like something to paint on, right? Whether it's like a piece of paper or something. Now, when you're drawing or painting on this piece of paper, right, you could draw anything, any sort of form, but without this paper, you wouldn't be able to draw or paint on it, right? The paper is literally pure consciousness. It's what surrounds all of life, right? This form is only maybe a piece of art, right? It's only something drawn, right? It's something that passes, but what doesn't pass is what's in the background of who we are.
Yeah, and I love these pointers, man, because it's like, what is it that we're looking for? Okay, so, well, it's not that which changes. Okay, so it doesn't change. If it changes, that's not what we're talking about when we say real. And it's great that you're defining what you mean when you say real, because that creates a problem. And I remember when I first encountered a similar, it might have been the same exact statement, even, I think, in Course in Miracles, they talk about nothing unreal exists. Nothing real is ever threatened. right? And so, well, that's a mind stopper. Well, wait a minute, that goes against everything that I experience that I've taken to be reality. I'm real, and yet I'm capable of being threatened all the time. And I don't know anything that doesn't change. Everything in my life experience changes. So then I have to start asking, well, wait a minute, maybe there is something that doesn't change.
Mm,
Well, let me check, let me go looking.
mm.
Can I find something that's changeless within me?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. You through this is what many call the process of self-inquiry, but when you really essentially search it up and see how you could do it, no one really definitively creates a specific process on how you do it, because this process is very, very spontaneous. And this is honestly a process of the person. It's a process of getting closer to the self. And you're right, you have to talk about what the self is not first. And the first thing is something that changes. Anything that is able to come and go is not that self, not the truth that I'm talking about. Now, what is not the self? It's something I've been reading recently is the philosophy of the Vedantas. And this is something that they say, it is not what the eye sees. The self isn't what the eye sees. The truth isn't what the eye sees. The truth isn't what the ear hears. The truth isn't the prana. The truth isn't the sense perception, the thought cycles,
Mhm.
any of that. It is the self that perceives that, those senses. What is the self that perceives that? Then yes, then you're like, oh, it's me, it's Sean. It's like, okay, when you say Sean, right? Sean, the word Sean, right? Just look at the word Sean. It's a bunch of lines, right? If you didn't understand English, right? It's just a bunch of lines. If you read Chinese, you don't understand, you don't know how to read Chinese. You see a bunch of lines, right? But that's the thing. It's mind created. It's when you think automatically Sean, it's mind created. That word Sean that you're seeing invisibly in your head right now, that's created by your mind. So essentially, that's proof that most people are so identified with the mind, because we think we are what the mind creates, which is Sean or whatever your name is.
Yeah, and all of our history, all of our
Yeah,
beliefs, all of our
all of
good
our
and bad habits, all of
yeah,
our shame, all of our guilt, all of our pride, whatever it is. And all those things, they come and go, they increase and decrease.
yeah.
There's many of them. That's another pointer. So we're getting into a little bit. I love this conversation, by the way, man. So we're getting into a little bit about some of the particular teachings that we've resonated with, because you're talking about um, the Vedanta, and
Yeah.
and so out of that same school comes this practice called the Drigdrishya Viveka,
Mm,
and it's actually late. It's like late Vedanta, like 800 AD, that around that.
mm,
And it's just a very, very simple practice that this Swami developed, and it points to these things we've been talking about thus far. One of them being that if it changes, that's not it. Another one
mm,
is, you said, if the eyes see it, that's not it. So we're talking about all objects and objective reality. That's
mm,
not it. There's also the objects that we see and create in the mind, and that's
mm,
not it.
mm.
It's also not two things, it's one. So it's
Yeah.
never two, because it doesn't have phases, it doesn't change in that way. So it can't be, uh, you know, it can't be one item and then two items we're talking about. It would only ever be
Right.
one.
Yeah, exactly. And let's go even more deeper into this. With when you see that, okay, it's not from the eye, it's not from the mind, it's not from the ears, it's not from any of that. Now, essentially, you ask the question of what is it? What is it? And then you're going to see a lot of gurus, or a lot of even the Upanishads, they even said it. It's the person who's really realized say it's wordless. Like I said, again, I'm say very clear. It's wordless. And and they use words of contradiction in order to describe it. So the thing is that the enlightened person, he could say that he has realized the true self, but he could also say he hasn't realized the true self. He doesn't know the true self, but he does know the true self. Now that gets people confused, like, what the hell does he mean? But when you ask what is the true self, he says he doesn't know what the true self is. It's like, you cannot it's basically pointing to what I already said. You cannot know the truth. Know, the word know. You can't know the true self intellectually. That's in that case, he doesn't know it. Doesn't know it intellectually, but yet he does know it, because he feels that oneness. He knows that oneness. He knows what essentially goes through all of us. The invisible, it's sort of invisible energy that goes through everyone. That is me. That's me. You're not the separate self. You're not your problems. You're not that. You're me. You're everything. I'm in you. And you could keep talking about, like, lots of people know that shit, like oneness. You can even see that as a spiritual concept. Everyone's like, oh, I know oneness. I'm you. I'm this. I'm this. I'm this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I hear
Well,
people say,
yeah.
yeah, but they don't they don't understand. I asked them, do you have the experiential experience of it? They're like, no. It's like, okay, fine. You don't know it.
Yeah.
You don't know that shit.
You know about it.
Yeah.
And so in the same way where, we could say, I know about a subject because I've studied it in books, but if I've practiced it and I've run experiments, let's say in that field, then I know it much more directly.
Yeah.
Now I have direct experience with it that's not dependent on the thought, the reading, the memory. In the same way, a simple pointer is, we can become aware of the feeling in our face, and then allow ourselves to become aware of the feeling in our neck, and then down the elbow, down the arm to the elbow even, and then continue on to be able to feel the hand from inside. And so there's an intelligent life that's aware of the hand from inside the hand, from around the hand. There's no boundary to it because it's sensing the energy and aliveness directly.
Yes.
Needing to create a story about it. Oh, I feel my hand, it feels hot, cold, whatever, like this. But the aliveness of it, the sensing of it directly, actually can bring us into a state of recognition of what we're talking about here, because it's that local awareness that's moved, but that is aware in and of itself. Just as you said, this awareness is everywhere, even in space where there aren't things for awareness to function through, like the brain circuitry. Awareness is the background which allows for everything to function, and it is aware and intelligent already.
Yes.
Prior to us, actually, and this is another amazing pointer that I love, is that we can, through inquiry, discover that there is awareness prior to thought. And oftentimes, even when we're doing meditation and things, we're moving from small mind into the space of spacious awareness, let's say, or heart-centered awareness and things like this. But if we, and this is, this is just something I discovered in practice, is that if we discover the source of thought, so in a sense, in my experience, the energy is flowing this way generally. The energy that flows up can form into thought. But if I move my local awareness, the same awareness that's able to be aware of my hand from within, if I move that down the spine, let's say, I notice there's awareness there that's pure, that's non-dual, that hasn't yet entered into the realm of subjectivity in a sense. It hasn't experienced that yet. And so it's not trying to return home, it's actually already home.
Yeah. That's you make a good point with that. For me, there's also one thing to add on as well. People confuse many spiritual experiences to be enlightenment experiences, and for example, you have to determine the difference between the manifestation of pure consciousness and unmanifestation of pure consciousness. You see, like you said, if you put the awareness down to the spine, like you said, it hasn't fully realized what's that yet, but yet it's at home, right? And that's essentially what I mean. The pure awareness, the high vibration, that sort of energy in its form, per se. Like when you listen to a very good music like Coldplay, right? I think Coldplay is a very good example of a manifestation of non-dual consciousness. I really do, because there's so much love you find in it. Ed Sheeran, for me, I feel anything that makes you cry, what's that chant again? Gloria in exilius Deo or something?
And excelsior.
Exilius Deo, yeah. You feel lots of power in it. I yesterday I was listening to it, 1,000 people singing that. Oh my God, just right when these thousands of people were singing that, I felt like an intense amount of bliss from that.
Yeah.
That's a
So
manifestation.
much.
Yeah.
Because it's praise. You're offering praise and thanks. And whenever we fill ourselves with those energies, that it just invites in so much bliss. So this is like what people often miss on the spiritual path. They understand about the sat, they understand about the chit, but they haven't experienced enough of the ananda. The sat being the truth, chit is consciousness, awareness. We say truth, reality, like you said before, the real, the awareness, and the bliss that comes from this realization of it in a lived experience.
Yes. I like to see these things, these manifestations, as little envelopes of bliss. They give you little envelopes of bliss. Same thing as you read a very, very deep scripture. Like I've been reading the Quran, actually. I've been reading the Quran. I feel like it's envelope of bliss too, because yes, they talk about punishment, they talk about all that, but they talk about punishment in a way that's different from many people perceive as punishment. Okay, they're talking about something very much deeper than that. And I'm gonna go through a whole level of other conversation with this. But essentially, when you feel the energy of that book, you feel that bliss and peace. You might even cry, right?
It's amazing because it's so different from our perceptions oftentimes in the West of the religion of Islam.
Yeah.
And I know for many years I harbored some false misunderstandings and prejudices against Muslims for their thinking that it wasn't as evolved or that it was less than in some kind of way. And it's just like any religion. There are people practicing it at all different levels, and there's a deep, rich truth. And the word means surrender. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how they talk about being submissive to God. Because what they mean by being submissive is mean surrendering your separate self to the higher self. Being submissive, being submissive, killing yourself for God, killing your idea of God, and let God flow through you,
Yeah,
right?
show you what God is. I love that, man.
Yeah. That's what true religion is. It's
If we're
not
holding
about
on to our concepts, we can't have that experience either. That's the thing. If we're saying religion is this way, God is this way, this is what spirituality is,
yeah,
then we got the floodgates closed to that
yeah.
experience of no, 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 I don't know what it is. I want to know what it is. I want to
Yeah.
know more of what it is.
Yes, yes, exactly. So, like, obviously, many religions, I'm talking about the communities, do not represent this. They don't. They really don't. But if you look in the direct teachings, for example, the Quran is literally the same it ever was since it was written by Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad. So literally, you do feel the direct transmission of his teachings from that book. But when you see it from other people, you see lots of dogma, you see lots of all that extra shit that's made by people. Buddha, you feel that direct transmission. When I say direct transmission, I mean you feel the context of what they say and not the content. And it's very important to see through the words and what they're saying exactly as words that the mind creates, but seeing what's underneath that, the feeling, the energy, the transmission through that. And that's so important because you have to, most people can't differentiate between truth and false. They can't. They can't differentiate between what's real and what's not. That's the truth of non-dualism. It's teaching you how to differentiate.
Yeah.
So, and
So you
that knowledge
know
is,
yourself, and that's the thing. We're
yeah.
defining these things very carefully, and then we're examining them to check: is this true in my direct experience? Yes or no?
Mm.
You know, and sometimes it's not always, because sometimes we're caught, and that's when we have to be very rigorous and be like, okay, I think this is true, but I don't experience it right now. What do I need to do? How can I shift? Or what am I not understanding?
Mm.
And now I go to work on those things.
Yes. Yes. For me, this is how I see it. Identification acts as a lock of all experiences. It acts as a lock. So if you think, okay, I'm Sean, and this is what I identify as, you're locking yourself towards that. Same thing as I feel like I'm stupid, and that's who I am. Now that lock is locked. You think that's who you are. And if you want to let that go, you're basically threatening your own perceive of your own existence. You think you're gonna die if you let that go.
It's the thing too. I didn't mention this, but you're absolutely right. And that returning home, there is a death quality to it. The feeling of returning home, it's like, in my experience, I've been passing through more and more the feeling of death.
Mm.
And it is a death. It's a death to what I used to identify as. It's a death to the old. And it just continues at deeper and deeper levels.
Yeah. And that's a thing. It feels like a death. But with spiritual information and what they call jnana yoga, is the path of knowledge, the direct path. It's really holding that spiritual knowledge. And with that spiritual knowledge, you keep that in mind in your own journey. So when you get to places where you face the most intense fears, you remind yourself of it. You remind yourself, death is not real. Death itself is even a perception. It's a perception. And when you feel like you're about to die, of course, if it's not like actual physical death, obviously, but if you feel like you're about to die, that's not real too. And you should not believe in it. So when you don't believe in it as much as you did before, you'll see it as that real. It's like experiencing the intense emotions of a movie. You experience emotions in the moment, but once you leave that movie theater, maybe fine, maybe you have some of it lingering, especially when you're watching like a horror film. But eventually it let goes very simply and easily because you know it's a film. Same thing with this. Same thing with that fear of death, that fear in general. Fear of death, fear of whatever, fear of caterpillars, same shit. It's fear. It's belongs in the realm of fear, whatever form it takes, whatever imagination it takes. It's the same shit. So you realize that fear isn't real. It's like going in that movie theater. It's like, oh, I'm feeling it, I'm experiencing it, but I know it's not real. So I'm just gonna actually surrender into it.
So we're getting into the benefits now of the non-dual path. Is
Yeah.
ultimately, if you continue on this path, you must come up against all of our internal fears. We were going to face them, and we're going to actually transcend them, move through them, dissolve them, and discover what it's like to be embodied without those fears.
Yeah.
And this is quite incredible. So we do give up some things, right? We have to surrender. People are like, oh, you get to surrender your ego, you get to surrender yourself. Well, yes and no. You have to surrender your identity with that self so that you don't buy into it so much. But we still function just like we're having a conversation here. I still know who I am. You still know who you are. We're not getting the two confused.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah.
But you might have to surrender some habits, some ways of thinking, some ways of making people wrong, blaming the world, or thinking things should change. All those things are going to have to be surrendered. Also, we got to let that shit go in order to discover these deeper hidden fears that is driving that stuff. Then we have to transcend them, face them, allow them to consume us and burn us up until there's nothing left. And now we see, oh, no more fear left. That one who was afraid is also gone. This is very peculiar.
Yes. And that's the thing with dealing with fears, phobias, and all that stuff. People believe it's a whole game. With fear itself, it's what many may call the hell realms or whatever. Fear itself, it's a game of manipulation at the end of the day. The fear is manipulating you to believe in certain things, to fear in certain things. But you have, with a non-dual understanding, is that you remind them that what you think is real is not real. And when you see that, even the fear itself isn't real. Now that brings you out of that manipulation that the fear is causing you, giving and making you to believe, and you're disbelieving it less. See, it's so hard to believe, let go of a fear if you had it all your life. But when you realize, or at least have a subtle, deep understanding, when you realize, wait, this might not be real, how can you hold on to something that is real, that isn't real, you know?
That's huge. And another point of it too is that we start to recognize that the mind is generating everything. Our experience is being projected by the mind. And we, in essence, are the source of the mind. And so whatever the mind projects as fear, and then we experience as fear, we're creating it. We're doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
We're forcing us to watch the scary movies and then forgetting that it's just a movie and reacting to it and living in that state of panic, survival, loneliness, degradation, whatever it is, we're running the show.
Yeah.
But that's another benefit of waking up to this reality, is that we start to recognize that, oh, I can throw different movies in this projector if I want, or I can shut the whole thing down for times and just rest.
Exactly. That's the thing. With non-dual work, it's all about shutting the whole thing down. Of course, you need it from time to time to function again. Like, of course, this whole consciousness thing is wordless. If I fell 100% deep into it, I'll fucking die. I'll literally leave the body if I really wanted to fall more deep into this. That's how it is. But as humans, we're naturally limited. But what we're trying to do with non-dualism is that we're trying to get as high as a consciousness as possible for us to still function in, but at the same time be unattached to things and do it in a loving, aware manner. Because most of the problems in the world come from fear, come from all these misunderstanding things that are not true, perception, personal reality with truth. See, when I was younger, when I was a little boy, I was so afraid of getting my hair cut. Whenever I would grow my hair, I love when my hair is longer. You know when people say mushroom head? I love that shit. And then my father would be like, okay, it's time to get your hair cut. But I was so afraid. I didn't like it because it felt like that image that I wanted was going to be killed. So when I did, I was screaming, no, no, no. And then after he would cut my hair, I feel intense regret afterwards. It's crazy. And I realized, when I look back, I realized there's a sense of desire towards the changeless, the permanent. And I was seeking that outside of me. I'm seeking permanence in the impermanent things.
Yeah.
Right? And that same thing when you're in a relationship, you're so afraid of them leaving, abandoning you. The same thing, seeking permanence in the impermanent. Thing is that you're directing your attention towards the wrong things. The permanence is more than just your relationship, more than just the haircut. That's the thing. I feel some people say there's a desire to discover this non-dual reality in every one of us. When you look at things through this, that we're seeking permanence and impermanent, in a way, that's like the same thing. You're seeking the non-dual understanding already without even knowing it.
I think it's all built in to the system. Yeah, I tend to think that it is the ultimate aim of all apparently individual spirits, is that we wake up to this reality. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I think. So, and I know that for one thing is for sure, I'm certainly blessed beyond measure to have become interested in it enough for it to hold in me and radically transform me. One thing I wanted to mention too, because you kind of touched on this just peripherally, was like any potential dangers to exploring this. And while danger is a extreme word, but I know for myself, there have been times when I got so wrapped up, I guess, in the study of it, in the trying to work it out and make sense of it in my mind, that I could get into very high states through meditation and these realizations that would come, but they wouldn't necessarily integrate and embody. And so for a time, I became a little bit of like a sort of almost like a non-dual cadet, like a space cadet of non-duality. And so one of the things you mentioned, though, is something about being able to not just be productive, but to like generally succeed in your endeavors in life. And so this kind of brings us back to the initial goal of where my lineage comes from, which is like non-dual Shaiva Tantra from like the Kashmir region of India. And yeah, there went to non-dual space, but mine just totally blanked. just mentioned that land and my whole, what the fuck? Are we Space Cadet. There we go. All right, so bringing it home. So over time, though, but they talk about this in the ancient tantras that the goal, the purpose, the aim of this path is direct spiritual realization of the divinity of your own self and success in life. Both. You should have both of these things on this path. And so it's not necessarily the path of the renunciant, but of course there are things we renounce along this path. So yeah, but it's not necessarily physical renouncing of things or taking on poverty, let's say, as a I forget what it's called now in the religious terms. Poverty is like a badge of honor. In Catholicism, they consider certain things like you wear these with honor, and that's one of them. So it's not that type of philosophy. And it's really about waking up to this reality, but then being able to use this realization to manifest goodness in your life in whatever form that looks like. Whatever. The more we tap into the connection with this divine reality, my belief is, and my experience is opening up more and more, that we are being given a vision or a purpose. And when the ego is surrendered, when there's no more self-will involved, especially because the realization has brought about such immense joy and fulfillment in my emotional body, in my energy body, so much so that the external reality moves into the background. It's not as important. My experience is being filtered and is being based on this deep connection, this infinite power, this supportive, loving. It's everything, and it's the source. So I forget where I was going with all that, but that's how times.
Yes.
Bring it back home into embodiment. That's it's imperative that we not just get lost in the mind or in high meditations and samadhis, but also make it practical. Like, how does this change my life?
Yes, exactly. It's so important to integrate this into your life. And the thing is that after my own awakening, something I've learned, of course, the samadhi is great. I'm telling you, samadhi is great. I've sat, like, it could be even useful sometimes. I was in the plane from Mexico, going back from Mexico to Canada, and I was like, oh my God, it's gonna take like hours. But like, I'm like, I'm just close my eyes. It felt like 5 minutes. I opened my eyes, I'm there. And so in that case, it could be useful. But at the same time, with samadhi, like once you're able to get into it a lot, you even lose interest in samadhi. Like for me, I haven't meditated at all. Well, fine, I'll lie with that. Maybe I will close my eyes every once in a while and just like sit in the stillness. I do that all the time. But when the stillness follows you wherever you go, there's no need to formally sit down and do it. And that's the whole point of meditation. Why are you doing the meditation to begin with? Why are you doing all of this shit? It's because you want a more fulfilling, happier life. That's when you get down to it. Whatever you do, you're wanting a more fulfilling and happier life. And there's no better way to do it than to have this non-understanding. And the thing is, when you're in the path, you might get a little lost through like these teachings, trying to read every single book, and you're asking about the dangers, which is very, very important. So I'll get to that. Something I've been recently looking around at the non-dual space, looking at different non-dual teachers, looking at, all of that. And see, I'm more of a context and not a content person. I don't look at what they say per se. They could say the exact same shit as I'm saying, but if I feel something's off about them, there's something off. And that's something you have to really trust. Everyone has this ingrained in them, is that their gut feeling, their inner knowingness, because trust me, you could read a bunch of books, say exactly the teachings that they're saying, but be coming off with the wrong intention. And that's a mistake of especially someone beginning in the path, is that you don't know that. So when someone lures you into their program or lures you into their group, you know, you might find some ingenuine teachers and ingenuine gurus or whatever. And again, I've done some research, so I've got a few words in my mind. I'm not going to say it. So
After we start the recording, we'll discuss it though.
oh yeah, we'll discuss it. But the best way is, for me, I always love to use kinesiology to test it out. The David R. Hawkins, he teaches kinesiology, tests the conscious level of each person. That's the easiest way to go through it. But that's a whole different topic. And you know, you may not even believe in it. That's fine. But for me, I either rely on my gut or I rely on this consciousness level technique, the kinesiology, to test your conscious level. Because someone could talk about non-dual understanding and they could calibrate like 130. I have one in mind. Anyways, so that's why it's so important. I'll name a few, fine. I won't name the bad ones, but name the ones where I feel is genuine. Eckhart Tolle, Rupert Spira, Sadhguru. Sadhguru is genuine. What else? The ones, Maharaji. And I'll talk about, hold on, these four. What else? Okay, I don't have any else that comes to mind. But for example, I tested Eckhart Tolle's conscious level. He calibrates around 700. Rupert Spira, this is my own calibration, by the way. Maybe it's wrong, okay? But sure. I'm just going by what I'm saying. Rupert Spira, I feel, is calibrated like 800. Yeah, so these are very high.
Super great. Yeah. Adyashanti is one from over here as well.
Yeah, I haven't heard of him. I should do it. Yeah, but that could be good for my research, though.
He's out on the West Coast.
Yeah. But yeah,
there was something in there too. Talking about, oh yeah, so a few pointers to help people in addition to that, right, to help them discriminate the teachers, right, to see if they're a vibrational match, let's say, to where they want to go.
Yeah.
And so I always will compare their sayings, let's say, with the works of ancient scriptures.
Yeah.
You get a sense of their energy, as you said, with your gut, and also watch their actions. Are they in alignment with what they say?
Yes. Yes.
And then over time, if you work with this person over time, what do you experience? Because if we're working with a teacher, we should experience growth. It's not always going to be easy, right? We might experience some challenge and difficulty, but if you work with somebody over a month or 6 months, there should be some growth at some points. You know, you're getting some benefits. Then you may get caught again, but then I have this realization, and the realizations come from within, not from a conceptual understanding.
Yes. And that's the thing, like, you're right. The actions is very important. I'm not saying action, oh, you become a vegan, therefore you're enlightened. No, I'm not saying that shit. Okay, I keep saying the S word. Maybe I shouldn't. But anyways, it's not about the actions per se. The actions reflect the type of their vibrational, their energy.
But what I meant to say, maybe I wasn't clear enough, but it's about the alignment.
Alignment
between their words, their actions, their thoughts, their emotions. All those should be
Yes.
in alignment.
Yeah. And exactly what he said, there has to be an alignment. And if you usually gurus have a sense of course, controversy is always there with every person who teaches, especially when they're popular. But when there are things like, there are common sense things that you see them do that the average person wouldn't do. And if you see them do some certain things that affect the lives of other people, for example, make them more suicidal, that's not a real teacher, you know? And you really, my biggest thing is always seeing through their energy, always trusting your gut with this, because even when they say something that might be the exact same from the scriptures, right? They could say it with the wrong intention. And they could say the same stuff as I'm saying, but they're not genuine. And that's a dangerous part of it. That's how manipulation works. That's how narcissism works. They use what lures people in. They use, for example, they might even talk about authenticity. They may talk about loving people. They may talk about all that stuff. But like you said, there's no alignment between what they preach and what they do and what their energy is.
Yes. And much of the time, they're not even aware of it.
Yeah.
Not even aware that they're doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
They think this, in their mind, they justify this is just the way things work. The end justifies the means.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So again, we listed a few names that I personally trust. I suggest you follow those people if that's something you're into.
Also,
Obviously,
we
yeah.
mentioned some spiritual texts as well.
Yes, yes. Definitely the Bhagavad Gita, the work, anything related with the work of the Upanishads are very good. What you call
The ancient tantras for sure. So my personal favorite, it's probably I don't know if I've read many of them in their entirety, but two of my favorites are the Recognition Sutras, which were written, I think, around 600 AD. The author's name is Kshemaraj with a K, Ksej, Kshemaraj, and Ksemaраja, Kshemaraj, and the text is the Pratabhignya Hridayam. In Sanskrit, it's the Recognition Sutras, as it's known in translation. It means the teachings on the school of the heart of recognition.
Yeah.
And so it's 20 sutras that really powerfully encapsulates this teaching, as well as offers practical application to realize it within ourselves. Now, that was a pretty lengthy text. If someone's looking for something shorter, I recommend looking at the Drigdrisha Viveka. We started to go into that. There are some incredible, simple practices that lead to this realization,
Yes.
So I'm glad that we're on here talking about it, that we've been promoting it. And
Yes. Course in Miracles, 100%. Course in Miracles. You can't go wrong with that. It's so organized in a way, like it has lesson by lesson, and you just follow what each lesson. Even though you may not understand what they're saying, at times it will click later on. And I've done it. By the sounds, you've done it, and it has at my time when I did it at the time, it has really beyond like expanded me consciously very quickly because of it. It's completely free. Just search it up. You'll find it. You could do lesson 1 right now.
That's right. Yeah, man. It's all available online. Yeah. So I guess we're getting towards the end here. One more question I didn't ask though, that I wanted to know about was, how did you become interested in this?
I was never interested in this. I was, well, not by the teachings at least. it was my own experience, and it was through my own experience of life. When I was 12, I was severely bullied, and I was coming back home feeling really shitty about myself, hopeless. Then a simple recognition that my past, my me rethinking my past all the time, I realized that my past wasn't literally around me. It was just the trees, the sidewalk. And when I realized it wasn't really around me, that thought of my past that I was killing myself with wasn't permanent. What's permanent is really presence right now. Now that was the first start, but I think for me is that through my own spiritual experience where I literally killed myself, killed my identity, went through that fear of death and got out of it, where I truly lost my sense of identity and melted into the consciousness that we talk about. And through that, after that experience, I can never put this to words. Of course, I had coaches before that to increase my with all that. But that experience was the main reason why I'm interested in it today, because this is the closest we got to words of explaining this type of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that no one has to be enlightened on it, like when you go through that fear of death, you get out of it, you actually it's not about getting rid of your humanness. It's about after I got out of it and felt the consciousness, the godness, I actually embraced and loved the humanness even more. Realize that you don't have to be enlightened and all that shit. You just have it. None of that matters. None of it really matters. And that shit. Now I'm getting to the wordlessness of it now. But that's essentially my experience of it. Really, the killing of myself. And for me, I like to say, for me, this is beautiful to me. Maybe weird to other people, but for me, I feel like I'm a slave of God. And that's really what I've become right now. And that's it, man.
I love it, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was pain as well that brought about the initial opening.
Yeah.
And then through my intense search for a way out of that pain, I was fortunate enough to come across some powerful teachings. And the more that I explored them, the more they made sense. And then I found them inarguable. And I found that they had an answer for everything, every question I had ever asked, and many that I had never asked. They had deep, well reasoned out over millennium answers that you could ultimately verify within yourself over time, should you undertake this practice as a deep commitment to want to bring about this realization that it is possible, you can do it.
Yes. Yes, it is possible, 100%. It's beautiful, actually. And remember, like, the acquiring of the spiritual knowledge, although I say it's wordless at the end of the day, the acquiring of spiritual knowledge could really get you out of some deep, deep suffering. So
yeah, it changes it. Even if there's still pain, it changes the filter. It changes the experience entirely.
Yeah. And this is the subtle work of non-duality. It's super subtle. But it's through that subtlety is where you find the massive transformation. And yeah. I guess that's it for me.
I was just gonna say that's a beautiful note to end on, man. Perfection right there, brother. This has been a incredible conversation, my friend. I hope that it's not the last.
Of course. I love this conversation, man.
For sure, man. It's great to be able to connect. And thanks so much for your work and wanting to bring about more of this truth,
Mm,
shining into the world we live in so that others may see it, recognize it for
mm,
themselves.
yeah, thank you. And you're doing great work too. Like I've seen the work you've done with men and the type of transformation that you've done, what I've seen, and you hold very strong awareness and knowingness with you through your teaching. This is actually very uncommon to find that in a coach. And although lots of coaches are like that, there are many coaches who are not genuine at all. So it's very, very, I love seeing coaches like you do your work because that makes me motivated and it reminds me why I'm doing this.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for saying that. Appreciate that.
Mm,
And so is there any way, I'm going to put some links in the description, ways that people can
mm,
find out more about some of the work that you're doing and myself as well, if they want to get involved, find out more, maybe work with us, developing some of these potentials within them. So what can you tell me about that?
yes, yes, yes. So the best thing you could do right now at the moment, literally, you could hit me up on Facebook. We could always have a free breakthrough call with this. For me, I'm not I'm not gonna talk about any programs or whatever. For me, oh my god, the cat just hopped on me. My bad. But okay, so oh my god. Okay, so my Facebook link will be on the below. Text me, and I have many many tools, and I also have my own teachings that we could that I could teach you and we could talk about in a private call. And it's really doing this type of work privately, I feel is very valuable because even with co if you do it with co one-on-one, like not only you will get the teachings, you receive the teachings, but you receive it directly, and and will give you direct experience based on your own unique situation. And I think that's where a lot of value comes in. So just hit me up on Facebook. I do lots of posts, and I may even do a workshop sometime. So you always uh, hit up with me.
Awesome, man.
And
Yeah, brother. I appreciate that. And and yeah, so guys, if you are interested in having a conversation more or less, you've got a link on your page as well. They can reach out through that or message you. And same here. I always keep my messenger open. I met some really cool cats that way. And also got my 12-week coaching program. So I'll put a link in the description for that. And yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
A few months and see what progress has been made, man, because things are moving for sure. It feels like this year more so than any in the last, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years. The energy of creation, of new beginnings, and
Yeah.
creative expression
Yes.
going through.
Yes. Yes. See, the thing is that if you want to find someone very genuine, go to Co or go to me, because we are not looking for anything more than that. And I see lots of distrust, especially in the Facebook groups, because there's so much coaches messaging people, like seriously. So the thing, and I get it, I've had it myself, and it's not a good feeling. So, but I know the feeling, how it's like to feel genuinely aligned with someone you're supposed to work with. And if you feel that alignment with any of us, hit us up.
Yeah,
That's it.
you feel the calling, man. My man, I want to give you a high five.
Boom.
Awesome, my man. So thanks again. And until next time, my brother.
course. Until next time. Thank you.
A pleasure. All right. Peace.
Mm.
Catch you guys.